Day Camp friends, to season 2 of the Day Camp Pod. This is episode 21. Blackjack, baby. Right? We did it. I'm Andy Pritikin, director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District, northwest of Chicago.
And I'm Ehren from Camp Robin Hood, located just outside of Toronto, Canada.
And we're Day Camp professionals, joining forces to provide a forum for you, Day Camp pros, to share ideas and best practices across North America and beyond. And for today's podcast, we have Jaime and Dane Pickles from Everwood Day Camp and Eric Shendelman from Shendy Swim Center discussing how to bring the sleepaway camp spirit to your day camp. So this Go Camp Pro podcast is sponsored in part by the American Camp Association, New York, New Jersey, dedicated to preserving, promoting, and enhancing the quality of the summer camp experience. Their professional development includes the Tri-State Camp Conference, as well as many other fall conferences that I have been enjoying so far. So I want to say hi to my friends, Jaime and Dane Pickles. How you guys doing?
Hi, thanks for having us today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's like it's big time.
I know.
Right? And so the reason I thought of Dane and Jaime, besides the fact that I'm friends with them and partners with them, is that these guys were plucked out of the sleepaway camp land, where my kids were going to sleepaway camp, where Jaime was a head counselor. She had to deal with my crazy daughter. Got her ready for day camp. And Dane was the boys' head counselor, and they were all about sleepaway camp at a really awesome sleepaway camp. And then, you know, bam, starting a day camp from scratch, right? In Massachusetts. So why don't you guys can tell us your camp origin story. How did you guys get into this? And you start from the beginning.
Wow. I mean, for me, hi, this is Jaime. For me, this goes way back. I mean, I'm a lifetime camp person. Started at 4 at a local day camp, lived outside of Boston. Sleepaway camp at, Kenwood and Evergreen at 9. Stayed on for 25 years at the same camp. I was all in. I know. Loving it. Counselor, unit leader, head counselor, program director. My camp life sparked a career in education. I became a teacher. And then, along the way, I met Dane. And he was this guy who came from England, and he was so charming. And that was
charming. It's true.
and that was, that was it. From there, we were all in. And we are now, been married for 12 years. We have 2 kids and a lovely little camp dog. So that's me. That's the short story of me.
And I was the J1 summer British counselor that never left. So, started at 19, Kenwood and Evergreen, and really ended up becoming my career. Ended up spending 15 consecutive summers there, and it became a year-round role. And
so Dane, were you at college, like walking to the cafeteria one day, and you heard all this bustling, and you were like, "What's over in that room over there?" And some like charming guy was just like, "Hey, you."
Yes, basically, it was back in the day.
That.
Yeah. Back in the day when, Unicamp and CCUSA and all those other, companies and Camp America and things like that, they would do fairs at colleges and universities in the UK, and that's where they would meet and present, and you'd find out about it, and it went from there. So, I trained to be a phys ed teacher in the UK, and then did this every summer, and then just loved it. Took a year out and basically never went back. So it all tied in together. Personal life, career, just all tied in.
All right. So did you remember the day when Scott Brody proposed this idea of doing this like fast food camp as opposed to your steakhouse experience?
Yes, I do.
I don't know if I would use that analogy exactly.
Oh, I kid.
I know. Fine fast food. It's fine fast food.
Yes. What do they call like the places, now, like the in-between places, right? They're casual something or other.
I don't know. But you can get kale there. That's all I know. I mean, I remember it, and I kind of, Dane and I were sort of at the point in our camp career where we were ready for more, and we kind of knew that we were part of a camp that didn't have a big opportunity for us next. So we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And there was a conversation about, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could take and make this amazing program, taking what we know about overnight camp but bring it to younger kids, or more, make it more accessible for more families. And it was sort of like, yeah, that would be cool. And off we went with it, and it happened. The summer before Everwood really became a thing, Dane and I actually took some tours around some day camps, and in New Jersey, we went to visit you, Andy, Liberty Lake, and a couple of others, and really tried to learn a lot, because it was different. It was definitely different than the sleepaway camp experience.
So let's go back to your tour of day camps the summer before we opened Everwood, right? Yeah. So what were you thinking when you were walking around these camps with 2 or 3 times as many kids in one spot, right? For one thing, right? Like what was your fears about being able to take this vision? Like, it's the great vision that everybody has of being able to have the sleepaway camp spirit in a day camp setting. Like, what were your fears about? Like what would be the obstacles?
I remember transportation. Like, transportation was such a huge thing. Like all of those buses and all of those kids, and some of them were so tiny, the little tiny kids. And what do you do to make a program for them? And I remember, like, instantly just the general feeling of the pace of everybody, from the directors to the kids to the support staff. Everybody, the pace was just so different, and it was the fear of, can we shift? Can we make this shift? And can we create a community like we've been living in for 20 years? And how do we do that?
And I remember the flip side, being excited about the buses, because I love logistics and I love a challenge. And I saw these day camp directors, with their stopwatch and trying to get them in and out at the exact right time. And I love that, just seeing that volume and, the amount of logistics that it takes to get all those buses where they need to be every day, in and out. And that's something you obviously don't get at 7 week. We were at a 7-week sleepaway camp, so kids only came in once and left once, beginning and end. So this is totally different world for us.
All right, so you go on your little world tour, okay, and now we're about to start Everwood Day Camp, summer number 1, right? And now you have a short list of what you would call, like, what is that sleepaway camp spirit that you want to make sure, like, this is like non-negotiable, like we have to have this in our camp? Like, what would be on that short list?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the first thing that I really wanted to do was focus on our mission. Like, what is our philosophy? Why are we doing this? It's not just about recreation. Like, what are we trying to teach? And then when we sort of were able to solidify, this is for us really about the social and emotional development and creating a community where kids feel like they can be their best selves, where they feel like they can take a risk, where they feel like, all these words that people use in overnight camp, feeling like a second home, feeling like you're part of something bigger. Those were always things that drove every single one of our decisions from the very beginning of Everwood.
Right, but what are the specific little things that you got to do to get that to happen? Because we could talk philosophically all day.
I know.
But there's a bunch of little things that you guys do. So that's what I'm trying to get.
I think it's some of them are the smaller, wackier things that you don't. I don't know whether. Well, first of all, we didn't come from day camp first, so we didn't have the exact comparison. We had all this time at overnight camp, right? So, the skits and the breakouts, even the fun little things that you'll do for a special event, a breakout and a skit. And I don't know, day camps may do that. I'm not sure if everyone does it, but the things that, you're having your counselors act fun, silly, but you're also creating traditions that kids are going to want to see that same time next year, right? You're setting an example for things they can't wait to see again that same time next year when it happens that week. So that was part of it for me, a small part, but I think there's a lot of steps to it. I think when we first started too, you can't have enough other overnight camp people with you. Like, if you can get just a small handful to go with you, because it was just Jamie and I, and then we had this whole new crew of people who didn't know sleepaway camp yet. And I think it helped. We had a couple of key people we knew from before from sleepaway camp that came with us, and that really helped, because the more you have that understand it and get it and can articulate that to your brand new staff, that's so helpful. I think that was a big thing too.
Yeah, we started with like traditions, right? Thinking about like knowing that in the camp world, a tradition can happen one time some kind of a ritual or some kind of a opportunity can happen one time for it to be considered a tradition. So, we took some of the things from our overnight camp world, things like songs, cheers, assemblies, campfires. Some of my favorite stuff are the special events that happen in sleepaway camp that really typically happen in evenings and weekends in sleepaway world, and actually building them into the program. So kids are doing stuff that they wouldn't normally expect to be doing. That was all huge parts of our program.
Yeah, well, one thing I saw in those from day one, and day one not being the first day of camp, day one being staff orientation, because that's really the first day of camp, is that here you had all these people who didn't necessarily go to camp before, right? They certainly never, went to a camp like the one we were making, and you immediately had them playing games and being fun and treating it like camp right away. So kudos to you for doing that, because I think that a lot of staff trainings are pretty boring. And you're just trying to sort of get in all the stuff that you have to get in. And, one of the things that my friend Dave Malter talks about all the time, who does staff training, is staff training should be just as fun as camp is. Right?
Definitely.
And it was and that was a big fear of ours, I think, at the beginning. I mean, how do you build that sense of community among your staff? Because that was just what we knew from a sleepaway camp experience. And, I know that there's a lot of day camps who may try and do as little bit of staff training before as they can, right? Just you kind of do the bare minimum. But what I would implore everybody listening is to make sure that you make the time for them just to connect with each other, so they're not just coming in and out, and that they're really having time to build connections, because they've carried our camp spirit the whole way through.
Along with that, this year, we wanted, one of our traditions is tie-dyeing, and we had a few people who were running it, but we wanted everyone to know how to do it. So this year at staff training, we bought them white shirts that were specially finished so that it would hold the color, and they all had to tie-dye together during staff training. And it turned into the most fun activity that we had during staff training, and it really was a good bonding. But then they all knew how to teach their kids every week how to do their tie-dyeing. So.
Very smart.
Right. Well, it seems like you guys are very, very into doing things with your staff and doing things with them after hours and stuff like that. Also, you really do try to keep the camp spirit going, which is impressive.
We do.
Also, one thing I want to say that they do at Everwood is that they keep it campy even at their open houses. So when kids are coming and visiting, that they conclude their open houses with a campfire, which is pretty darn unique. And now I do to a degree with my s'mores and such too. But I really think that you guys have done a great job of keeping like the camp spirit going in all that you do, and with your staff and with your kids.
I mean, people love. We were building a camp from the very beginning. And people love hearing from us and feeling when they come to the open house, like feeling our energy and connection to us and feeling that camp spirit right away. I think that definitely sells it. And then when you have some roasted marshmallows happening in the background, it's like, the equivalent of, chocolate chip cookies at an open house. If you're trying to sell your house, it helps. It sets a stage.
Jamie, I don't know if you remember, we even did before our first summer even opened, we did a kind of sunset campfire on the beach with some of our newly enrolled families. So that wasn't even really an open house. That was already people that had already enrolled, which was a small group in our first summer. And it was marshmallows, s'mores, campfires, playing guitar and singing along, and just trying to be as kind of transparent about who we are and what we're all about as we could. And I think that helped a lot for people to try and understand maybe why we're a bit different than regular day camps around us.
Yeah. In regards to songs, right? Because that's always going to be a common thing you hear about when people are talking about how to bring the sleepaway camp spirit to day camp. I think that one thing that's like super impressive with you guys is like how you jump into it so quickly, and how you're so willing to do it, and how you're so willing to be goofy. I think there's a lot of people that are in this industry that don't want to look bad. kind of thing, or that, maybe they're just introverts or whatever it is. But I think that it's just so stinking important, and it really helps put your camp over the top in a way, because you said it yourself. There's little kids all over the place. They're little,
Kids, yeah.
they're small. They want to sing. They want to do cheers.
And when everybody's doing it, there's something really special about being part of a large group of people who are singing a song together. No matter what, like if I'm singing the Moose song in front of the entire camp, and you look and you see a 4-year-old and you see a 15-year-old, and they're all doing it, it just solidifies that connection that you have in your community. It's awesome. And there's, there's some really great, like if you're not comfortable with it, there's some great websites out there actually, like that you can actually go in and look and learn. One of my new favorites is called Go Noodle. If you haven't heard about Go Noodle, go take a look at it. And if you talk about people being silly, like these are grown-ups who are dancing and singing mostly camp songs. It's a website that was like particularly geared towards educators and classroom teachers. But take a look at it, because it'll help you frame, what can you do? And it's so worth it every minute, even the big kids.
Right. And also a lot of day camps, which are relatively new out there. You talked about traditions, right? And when you start a camp and there are 0 traditions, you have to be really intentional to start traditions.
Right.
Right.
And it's really, right. Yeah. It's about a schedule. Like if I think a tradition can happen, if it happens on Monday and then it happens again on Tuesday, instantly it's a tradition.
Right.
Right.
But also like goofy traditions, that you would see at sleepaway camps,
Yeah.
Not just, yes, we have an assembly every Monday morning. Okay, that's nice. But like the more quirky kind of things that give the place character.
Yeah. I mean, we had, at the end of the day assembly, we had we randomly called these 2 little clothespin clips, Egbert and Egg Bertha, right? Don't ask me why we named it that. I really don't know. I think we were looking for e-names, and for some reason Egbert makes sense. And these little clips travel around camp, and whoever has it at the end of the day gets to do a fun dance in front of the whole camp at the end of the day. And that was just one tradition that we started at the beginning. And that has nothing to do with our property or our facility or the program. It's just a little silly thing that kids just loved at the end of every day. So there's so many things like that you can do no matter where you're running your camp.
I think it's great. It's great to hear that you're able to that you were so, like Andy said, intentional about the way that you designed your program, and that you were able to go to these overnight camps and day camps and sort of bring the best of both worlds together and into a program. And as someone who runs we operate a camp that's that tries to bring the overnight camp spirit into what we do. And just to hear your sort of list of things that that I don't always think about, of things that are important to to making that experience more like overnight camp, is just it's very it's very tangible, and and people can do that. People can bring these things in. Just one small thing at a time, one small change can really can really make the difference, I think.
So I have a question about one thing you said, because I think it's really relevant. You mentioned pace, right? The pace of the day camp. And if you create a day camp that's on a 30-minute regimen with no passing time, where you're just rushing from one thing to another, I think right there you're sort of losing some of the fungibility of a sleepaway camp program. So what do you think about that, Dane and Jamie, in regards to pace? Like, how do you take the craziness of a day camp guy and insert some of the sleepaway camp pacing? And of course we can't have rest hour and shower hour and like all these 92 other things they have at sleepaway camps, which, by the way, are the parts of sleepaway camp that I remember most.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The informal times.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
So what can we do? What have you done at Everwood in regards to that intentionally?
Well, I think one of the things that that we have adapted and changed even over the years as we've gotten to sort of settle into our program, we love transition time. I think a lot of day camp professionals will be like, transitions are the worst. How do we get kids from one place to another? What do we do? Like, that's where the meat of who we are as a day camp, I think, comes in the times between activities. And that we had started with a bigger program with very limited transition time, and everybody was feeling stressed out. So we took a period out of the day and we moved everything around a little bit, and we gave everybody tools to help with those transitions. We have long lists of sort of scavenger hunt like things that counselors can do when they're bringing their group from one place to another. Bag of tricks with games and activities. It's a huge part of our training, and that allows the counselors to do what we really hired them to do, right, which is lead. We want them to lead and do stuff, and it gives the kids an opportunity to get together, and it's a really fun time. So I would say, don't fear transition time, and don't fear the downtime.
Embrace
it.
To see kids going around camp playing silly little games in between activities is the best. Like you said, Andy, the things you really remember were not the actual activities. It was those other little bits in between. It's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we'll be having, we're hoping, Sam, when you see Brandwine next, okay, because I know he's coming, he's a Chicago guy. We want him back on to do a show specifically on transitions, because he did he did a thing, he did an hour-long thing for my staff on a mid-season staff training on that, and it was spectacular. All right, well, thank you, Pickles. We'll be referring back to you guys, so don't leave us. But I want to get on to our new friend Shendy. But first off, I just want to say that that Everwood Day Camp does have one of the most extensive wibbits things that you've ever seen in a lake. Like, very reminiscent of an actual sleepaway camp. It's really, really extensive and awesome. And they brought it to our friends at CRS Commercial Recreation Specialists, who, wow, what a coincidence, happened to be one of our sponsors. So thank you, CRS, for all your wibbits and water trampolines and splash pad products. And check out their website at crs4rec.com, because CRS is serious about fun. All right, Shendy, you have been, I feel like I'm a parent with a little kid. You've been so patient. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let me in there. Let me in there.
You're in. You're in. Let him in the ring. We just did the tag now. You're in.
This one's sponsored by SwimFin. Fun flotation aid for all your swimming needs. Thanks for having me on. You're saying my new friend Shendy. I've been in the camp industry over 30 years. And do I need my passport to talk to you, Andy?
No,
being a Canadian.
You don't.
Anyways, thanks for having me.
We're used to Canadian. We had Howie on the last one. This is all under the Travis Allison umbrella. We're like honorary Canadians ourselves here.
That's true, but I guess I've been hiding from you guys. I'm happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
Come to Tri-State.
In Canada, Shendy is a big deal, believe it or not. He is.
Well, that's what Ehren told us. He said we got this big macher.
Canadian guru.
Yeah.
So
what's your origin story? How'd you get into this camp thing, Shendy?
Well, similar to Jamie, I was 3 actually, and I went to a little camp. I went to a little community camp, actually. It was literally a small little town in Ontario, Canada, called Innisfil. And my parents sent me to a community-based camp where they had a field, and then we had to climb over rocks to get to the water, which I believe was unsupervised, if I remember correctly, when I was 3. There was one ball in the middle of the field. I have vivid memories of that, and all we had to do was chase it all day. I remember my first overnight the year after that. I was 4. I was with a friend. We were sitting on a park bench. My parents just dropped me off on the park bench in the community field, and there were 2 gentlemen sitting there, and we looked at each other and we said, what are we going to do now? And we asked the men for some money so we could walk across the street at the age of 4 to a local candy shop, buy candy, come back. Nobody's watching us. It's terrible. I've told this story before, and this is the main reason why I got involved in safety and supervision, because I remember these horrible stories. But then a year after that, when I was 5, I went to Camp Arrowhead, which is also in Innisfil, which is a camp that I ultimately ended up directing for 8 years. I went there for 10 years as a camper, and then I was a pre-CIT and CIT at an overnight camp, Winnebago in Huntsville, Ontario. And then I was on staff there for 8 years, finishing as their program director. I had started my swim school at that point. I was in teachers college. I became a teacher again because of the influence of camp. Just loved the whole feeling around it. Couldn't wait to get back there every summer. I went from day camp there to overnight camp because my parents, who rented a cottage, and this was sort of a cottage-based day camp, said, "You're done. You're going to overnight camp." Saw some video on film from a director that came to my house, and boom, one 5-minute film got me hooked with overnight camp. Following that, again, I ran through that overnight camp and had an opportunity to run Camp Arrowhead, the camp that I went as a camper to, and then started a family, got married, continued to run that camp, started my swim school at the same time, taught school. So I had 3 jobs at one time. My wife looked at me, she goes, "It's time to start narrowing it down." And I basically was lucky enough to get a full-time gig running a day camp in Toronto, which had over 1,000 kids a week. Arrowhead only had 100, so it was a big transition from doing that for 8 years, and then ultimately my 10-year span of camp directing at a day camp in Toronto was fantastic. All the while running my swim school, I had to give up teaching. And then at the end of 10 years in day camp, I said, you know what, this is fantastic. I really love taking care of children in a camp setting, but I really love to teach kids how to swim, which is a life skill. So that's what I'm doing now, running Shendy Swim School.
Wow, that's a serious origin story there, buddy.
Yeah, I was told to keep it short, by the way.
that was pretty truncated. Yeah, wow, I'm sweating just listening to that. So
I apologize.
No, that was awesome. So here you are. Okay, you get the gig as to run Crestwood Valley Day Camp, right? And now you just had this extensive, sleepaway camp immersion, right? So how do you define the sleepaway camp spirit as to like what we can bring to a day camp setting?
That for me was really easy. They in the day camp they already had a pre-made fire pit, so definitely the roasting of marshmallows if there wasn't a fire ban on that particular day in downtown or midtown Toronto. The idea of having some overnight camp activities in a day camp setting, kind of gearing them up to be able to go and try them up at overnight camp, such as, Gaga was a big one. I don't know how many of you have played the game of Gaga, but that was big. That was big at our camp. In fact, I own some websites that I haven't made use of. I own Gaga Court International .com. I own GagaGloves.com. Because there is something called Gaga Knuckle that you can get by scraping it. So
very popular in our nurse's office.
Yes, ours too.
That's
amazing.
Transferable from day camp to overnight camp. Everyone's getting Gaga Knuckle. Doesn't matter where you are.
There's a merchant that ACA National that sells Gaga gloves.
I know. I've talked to him. He wanted to buy the website. He refused to pay what I'm asking. So, but maybe one day we'll use it. Anyways, I think that the idea of enveloping some great overnight camp activities to prepare the kids for what they're about to see. Again, ropes courses at our day camp. We had a low ropes course, whereas the overnight camp might have had a high ropes course. Climbing walls challenge courses. It really doesn't matter what the activity. I think the younger kids these days are getting into it comparable to when I was 4 and 5 and 6 years old, getting ready to go off to camp. I was actually a late bloomer when I went to overnight camp. I was 14. I was a second month pre-CIT, my first year at overnight camp. And that was a tricky transition, even though I knew a couple of the guys, because most of the kids had been there together. But again, it's the idea of just throwing yourself in, immersing yourself. It doesn't matter whether it's day or overnight. The influence of a great counselor. I mean, that you talk about staff training, and some people dread it and some people think it's boring. I was just listening to a speaker this morning talking about the fact that staff training should be presented as a staff investment. They are investing their time to be able to turn something great into something even greater for children. And I really believe in that. So day or overnight camp, I really think it comes down to the staffing, the training, the safety, the supervision, and then ultimately maybe the experience of some great activities to prepare them.
Right, but when you think about the difference between a day camp and a sleepaway camp, besides the fact that the setting might look different, besides the fact that the kids might be younger at a day camp, right? What can a day camp do? Like for all the people listening to this day camp out, the 10,000 downloaded episodes so far, right? Like what could these people do to bring some day camp spirit to their places, like this summer?
Guaranteed, the songs, the cheers, the creation of a culture where they can't wait to get back. I used to make fun of my friends that went to day camp, that worked at day camp every year when I was off to overnight camp. They had to stay an extra week, right? Because day camp's an extended 8-week program, whereas most overnight camps were 7 weeks. I used to say, you really should hit up yourself going to overnight camp. What's with the day camp thing? And the real point is that creating this culture with songs, with traditions like Jamie had mentioned, is key to the success of a day camp and preparing them for overnight camp. And the last thing I want to say about that is that being able to send them off to an overnight camp experience, like we partnered with 2 other overnight camps and gave them a 2-night, 3-day experience. I liked your idea of maybe this fast-paced perception of day camp. Maybe we need to slow it down at various times. So having an all-day program, color war, it doesn't matter how young the children. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming for the younger ones, but giving them an activity or taking them on a hike and preparing them such as an overnight camp experience would be amazing.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we do at my camp that they're starting to do at Everwood now is integrating free play into the actual schedule.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that unstructured time
Great
is
idea.
something I think that a lot of day camps tend to overprogram. And going back to resident camp, like the hour after lunch and the hour after dinner and that kind of thing, those nice relaxed informal times, I think the kids really do enjoy them.
I think
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Shendy. I was just
no problem.
10 years in there, seeing it benefit the 15-year-olds just as much as it benefits the 4-year-olds, the free play time.
Right. I also think day camp directors are just a little gun shy to try to break the mold, the day camp mold. Shendy alluded to like a color war kind of thing where, the schedule breaks, and you're just doing this thing for like 2 hours, right? One of the things that I stole from my sleepaway camp brethren, from the camp that Dane and Jamie were at, is that they used to do this thing called Palooza in this hollow area where they did like an all afternoon kind of music festival kind of thing. So we do that at my camp now. So we take an entire afternoon and give them a lot of different options, and there's bands playing on the stage and all that kind of thing. And it's loose. And it's goose, and the type A people want to have a nervous breakdown at times, but we've well managed it, and we give them plenty of options, and the kids really do enjoy having a break of the schedule instead of being just rushed off from one thing to the next. Right? We talk about how parents overprogram their kids. They come home from school and they're immediately off to dance lessons and karate lessons and then homework and then this and then that, right? And then they come to day camp and we tend to do the same things. So I think being creative and trying to figure out how to loosen that pacing a little bit, even if it's just once a week or something, or every once in a while, I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I think building that kind of thing into a tradition is fantastic. I also loved running talent shows, whether it be camper talent shows or we did staff talent shows at Crestwood, and we would have them try out for about a week so we could put on the best possible talent. So staff then could entertain kids. I think that's a nice break from the regular 30-minute by 30-minute activity. And for 18 straight years, I exercised my option to be in the talent show. I have a hidden. Actually, I used to like bringing out my talents, and I do a lot of ball twirling. During rainy days at the cottage, my parents would put me in my room with a ball, and I learned to twirl on all 10 fingers off my head. Ehren, can you attest to that? Have you ever seen that?
So yeah, and Shendy, as the past president of the Ontario Camps Association, he took the microphone whenever he could and used that opportunity to share some of his talents, and I was always blown away and impressed by what I saw. So I think it's definitely an entertaining thing, and I think that that just leads me to something I've been thinking about, which is the fact that a lot of day camps. There are a lot of day camps that where kids are. It's just another program for kids where they're just going. They're just going for a really short component of their summer, and some of these day camps unfortunately don't have consistency in their staff and directors even. And when you have an opportunity like I think as the case with all the people on this pod today is the fact that, we have an opportunity to build relationships with the parents and differentiate ourselves, that family, that personal touch that you might not have in a camp where the director and all the staff change from year to year. Shendy is a guy who's who he's a funny guy, obviously, you can see, and a guy who builds some great relationships, and a lot of the parents I know at his camp would sign on just because of their relationship with him, and continue to trust and come back. So I don't know, Shendy, if there's anything you did, special, anything special you did to, foster those relationships, but I know that that's a part of what you've succeeded at.
I'd like to give credit to this person I heard this morning called the Ritz-Carlton Experience, but I can't remember his name. And he talked about good customer service versus great customer service. And when you give parents good customer service, you're giving them what they expect. And that is, a positive response to their questions, hope that you take good care of their children, give them a program that they are going to thrive at. But then going above and beyond would be doing something that they weren't expecting, like you remembering their name when they got to parent night, talking about their child and going that one step further as a camp director. It's a lot of work when you have 1,000 kids in camp, but you got a 39-day summer, and going above and beyond is a really important message that I actually learned this morning. I knew it was always important, but to make a conscious decision to go that extra mile really does pay off if you're running a camp.
Awesome.
So that was something I thought I did, but if I had another 5 years, I would add a little bit more.
So one of the things that the Pickles mentioned to put in their first year running a day camp, and that a lot of day camps do, but you'd be surprised how many don't. Like, to me, like the no-brainer, easy, like low-hanging fruit is having an assembly. Having all camp assembly if possible. Mm-hmm. But even if your camp's too big and you have to have it divisionally, that kind of thing, the sleepaway camp assembly is gather around a flagpole, right? Like, so if you're able to create some kind of semblance of that at your day camp, it's just a feeling of community that you're trying to get. And it's an easy one to do. And I just keep going back to the goofy, stupid songs, right? Like Skinnamarink, Dinky Dink, Skinnamarink.
I'm telling you, go look at Go Noodle. They're all there. Yeah, Peel the banana. Go bananas. There's so many.
My favorite.
Yeah.
When Jamie was talking about the magic of a whole bunch of kids doing something all at the same time as a group, we tried to get all 400 to do the Macarena one time together. And that just brought that back. But,
yeah, we had an incredible dance specialist a few years ago that had ended up teaching the entire camp a dance, and they did what do you call it when it just
flash mob? They did a flash mob for us, and Jamie and I did. Jamie and I didn't know about it. They were able to keep it from the two of us all summer, and then they surprised us with a flash mob.
800 kids, 250 staff, all in our Friday afternoon assembly doing a completely choreographed dance. It was amazing.
That is totally killer.
It was amazing.
Really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That is amazing.
All right. Any last thoughts, Sleepaway Camp Spirit?
Shendy, when you were talking about your Gaga pit, we had one built for us, and it took over everything. I had to finally limit everyone how long they could be in the pit because they weren't planning anything else anymore. They weren't doing group games or, but it's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful part of camp.
It's a great game. Being inclusive, making sure everyone plays fairly. Really important to teach them at the day camp level before they go off to overnight camp. I was fortunate to be at a day camp that had water skiing. And so it turned out that my water skiing instructor moved to the day camp the next year with me. So it's kind of cool to meet up with counselors I had from day camp that ultimately went to the overnight camp. So to have that experience, I was very fortunate to have that. So there you go.
That's great. All right, so before we move on to the day camp tip of the week, so Shendy, I don't know if you've listened to this podcast before, but at the end, we all come up with a little tip, right? So before we do that, I just want to say that the tip of the week is brought to you by our friends at AM Skyer, right? For almost 100 years, AM Skyer has been one of the leading insurance brokers in the country. strategic partner for summer camps. They do great trainings like child abuse trainings and such, which before the camp season starts with your staff, and they'll rise to the occasion with all kinds of PR and legal and health and facility issues and more. Check out the AM Sky or Difference. They are awesome. They are our friends. They sponsor pretty much everything that ACA does and the Day Camp Pod. All right, so my first one, simple, easy, because I know we got a big cast of characters here today. We did it a few years ago. We're going to probably bring it back this year. It was simple. It was Mustache Day. So we just had on the calendar, Mustache Day. That was it. It could be whatever you want. And to have hundreds and hundreds of kids, boys, girls, little ones, big ones, coming in with mustaches, I got to tell you, it was one of the most funny things that you have ever seen. And yeah, it's just, you know, and especially the like the little 7-year-old girl that like literally lasted till 4 o'clock with her mustache on her face, you know?
Awesome.
It's a great thing. All right, Sam.
All right. I asked all my directors what their favorite tool was this time, and it was unanimously Pinterest. So Pinterest is a website for crafts and arts and crafts and that type of thing. So if you're not good at crafts, it gives you step-by-step instructions for thousands of different art projects or crafts. And if you're totally into crafts, you could spend 5 hours on the website finding new ideas and printing them out and going from there. So Pinterest.
To plug Pinterest a little more than that, my marketing friends tell me that I am very negligent for not having an active Liberty Lake Pinterest account, because there's so many moms that are on Pinterest that are looking for stuff through there. And think of all the crazy stuff, Sam, in our 21 episodes that you've talked about that your camp does. If you had examples of those kind of things on a Pinterest site, like that could be a very well-traveled site.
Absolutely.
Right? So, yeah.
We could contribute to that.
According to my marketing friends, like after Facebook and Instagram, the next one is Pinterest that you should really be on if you got the resources to make that happen. All right, Ehren.
And each one of those social media sites could really require us dedicated staff person to do it ultimately the right way, but we try our best, right?
Yeah, you got Blair, you know, we all know Blair now.
We do have Blair. So mine, it's actually funny because I think Jamie was talking about a similar activity to the one that I wrote down on here a week ago, but this game called Gotcha, which it's great for the encouraging staff spirit and creating that that staff experience, like an overnight camp experience. We have done it for the past few years during our pre-camp training. Some painstaking work goes into writing down the names of each staff member on these clothespins. And we have like almost 300 staff, so it's a lot of time. I don't do it myself, but a number of people help with that, and everyone gets a clothespin during training right as they walk out of the first opening session, and they spend their pre-camp week. Well, we sort of do 3-4 days of pre-camp depending on the year, and they spend that time trying to meet as many people as they can, and learn each other's names. And when they find the person they're looking for on their clothespin, they pin it onto that person's shirt. And so, it's called Gotcha. There's probably some other variations of it, but a lot of fun.
That's a pretty cool one. Thank you so much. All right, Pickles, you're up.
I would say Minute to Win It. If you guys haven't seen that show on Netflix, Minute to Win It is household items that you can make an unlimited amount of games from. And we run it as a special event here, but it's a great rainy day activity. And every single product that you use in Minute to Win It is basically things you already have around your house or at your camp already. So check that out on Netflix. I believe there's the newer seasons on there, but there's some older ones too online. And there's just unlimited amounts of games you can play.
Actually go online, and they have every single activity sort of outlined in terms of the material you'll need and how to do it. So you can go through a sort of a bank of each activity. So it's all laid out there for you, and they're really fun.
And Jimmy Fallon does some stuff with Minute to Win It also. And so there's some great, I think there's a website where somebody's compiled all the Jimmy Fallon Minute to Win It stuff as well.
There you go. Yeah.
Right, and we've had a couple of Minute to Win It special event days and boardwalk things and such too. And we keep them in a shed. And if it's a very rainy day, we might actually bust them out and enhance, kick up the rainy day a notch.
Yeah, it's perfect rainy day stuff. Minute to Win It is the best.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Mr. Shendelman.
Hey, Andy, I'm still here. All right, so this is mine. I came up with a program that used items that could be reused, basically. We served milk at camp years ago. I don't think they do that anymore with all the lactose intolerance in the world, but you can use other things. So what we did was we collected all the milk cartons, we soaped them up and we washed them out and filled them with rocks. And we actually created an entire bowling alley for the entire camp. We created pins, 10-pin, 5-pin bowling. Kids these days, I don't really think are in tune with bowling. And you get probably a dodgeball ball at this point, and have the entire camp have a bowling day by using either reusable cartons or other containers that they might recycle otherwise. That would be my tip of the week. You can do it at overnight camp or day camp.
Nice.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And you're right, Shendy. Bowling has sort of gone the way of the dodo bird in a way.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
But kids love it. And when you take them bowling, if you take kids off on rainy days, you're looking for a field trip. It's a good, relatively affordable field trip to take kids to an old school bowling alley. It's a great staff outing to go to a bowling alley because your staff are young and they're not used to doing it. And I just want to say that when I started my camp at Liberty Lake and I was looking for cheap program things to do, we actually bought outdoor bowling pins and outdoor bowling balls and made it an activity. And now it's like the kind of thing that we would do during free play. And the kids love it.
Yep,
I love it.
absolutely.
Just like badminton. I mean, these old school games. I mean, we are the last bastion to keep these things alive, people.
I know. It's unbelievable. I would go one step further though. Like it was Kawartha Dairy cartons, and the highest score got to go to Kawartha Dairy. I mean, you got to build that in. The kid had no idea why he was getting on a milk truck, but got to add a little flair to your program.
All right, so Shendy, do you ever cross the national lines and come over on this side of things?
I'm currently in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, so you have. Look at that.
I am. I'm over here at the United States Swim School Association Conference and Trade Show, and we're all working to lower the drowning rate in our country, in our continent, and in our world.
All right, and if anybody wanted to reach out to you, how would they get you?
Eric, ERIC, at Shendys, SHENDYS.com.
So you own the URL Shendys.com. Look at that. So I can't make a fast food restaurant called Shendy's because you're there.
we can talk. Send me an email.
Everybody's got a price, Shendy.
That's right. I'm always looking for new ideas.
All right, cool. And how do we get in touch with the Pickles? And Everwood Day Camp? How do we find that?
EverwoodDayCamp.com, of course. I'm Jaime, JAIME, at EverwoodDayCamp.com.
And I'm Dane, DANE, at EverwoodDayCamp.com.
Awesome. And if you ever have any questions, you have any ideas for any shows, or you want to ask anything of us, we have an email here too. It's actually daycampquestions@gocamp.pro. I said it right for once. So thanks to our executive producer, Travis Allison, for helping get this out to you. Our regular producer, Matt Hansberger, for doing all the editing on this. Our generous sponsors, ACA New York, New Jersey, Commercial Recreation Specialists, and AM Skyer, for allowing us to bring this podcast to you. And of course, to Eric, Shendy, Shendelman, and Jaime and Dane Pickles from Everwood Day Camp. And if you don't want to miss an episode of the Day Camp Pod, you should subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with yet another Day Camp Pod. Thanks again to our guests. Check us out. Go to daycamppodcast.com for the show notes and all that. This has been the Day Camp Podcast.